AI isn't, I think, remotely ready to do a lot of things, to do most things, personally. Welcome back to Evolving Your Workplace. I'm Carol Schultz. Today, we're going to discuss how AI and other technology will transform marketing in 2025 and how to make sure you utilize it to the best of your abilities. If you're looking to learn more about marketing your product or service more effectively, or you'll lead a company looking to harness AI, this one's for you. I'm joined by Paul Didwall, founder of Farfalla, a growth marketing workshop. Paul, tell me a little bit more about what you do and what it means to be a growth marketing workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Carol. So in terms of, what I do and really how we've gotten to here, is I've worked across the past decade across nearly every vertical imaginable in the digital marketing and some more traditional marketing space as well. And through doing that, have found that there's really a large subset of the marketing community and brands that need, marketing services that are really just trying to constantly grow. And that spans verticals for sure. So you can have e-com businesses that really want to take off and, start from a small ad spend budget, scale that up so that they're then getting that bigger return, those bigger revenues. You can have that on the B2B side where you're a new market B2B product and you just need more leads in the door. How do you keep getting those leads in an efficient manner so that you can scale up your business that way? So really everything that I like to focus on and kind of how I've gotten to this point is by focusing on those brands that do really want to scale up and leaning into those opportunities to help them grow, because that helps everybody in the business grow. Obviously there's more traditional marketing approaches. There's brands that have been around forever. I've worked with, some of those as well. They're not necessarily in that same kind of growth setup year over year. They're obviously still looking to grow their revenue and their, top line numbers, but kind of from that really like starting point to getting to that next level, that's really where I come in terms of, how can we help these brands grow their revenue, their following, whatever it is, in the digital marketing space. That's where I like to come in.
Yeah. So, as we both know, everything's really evolving pretty rapidly in this day and age, marketing being one of them, right? And, the most recent shiny object is AI, right? Hey, and every single day I cannot tell you the numbers of both emails and LinkedIn messages I get with people trying to pitch me. Either they're trying to connect with me and then I read, we use AI to do this and I just delete them. Because the AI isn't, I think, remotely ready to do a lot of things, to do most things personally, right? So, knowing how to present your offering in a way that appeals to your target audience is really key, I think, in moving forward, rather than spamming out a whole lot of stuff on LinkedIn, which is what I get from people, and email, people spamming me out, right? But, with AI and the internet largely shifting, it's like we really have to learn or relearn how we go about this, right? So, when you think about AI and its effects on marketing as we move into 2025, right? We're recording this at, a week before Thanksgiving. So for people who, when this does go live, which probably won't be until January, what do people need to be thinking about? And what are the questions? I run a small business. There's a lot of people that have gone into, whether they're solopreneurs or they're building small businesses, that just don't know the first thing about, they know marketing's important, but they don't know the first thing about, like, how do I know that if I'm hiring somebody, I'm hiring the right person?
Right. No, I think,
What are the
and
questions I should be asking?
right. Oh, 100%. I think, I really agree. I think in a lot of ways with, is AI quite ready? Not really, not in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful. I think it can provide a lot of good inspiration to what you're doing, but overall, I think there's, still some missing pieces. It's not necessarily going to fit in perfectly with the brand. I see those same things across LinkedIn. I mean, even I feel like ads every day for, I'll try this new AI tool. I saw a local conference for AI that made no sense because in a small town for local businesses, I just don't think that, those local businesses necessarily can benefit in the same way. I think on the marketing side of things, there's a lot that it does help with. One thing that I think always comes to mind. Kind of the first AI is, ChatGPT. How are people taking that and using it? And I've worked with a lot of practitioners, and I really think that that kind of where the sweet spot is right now. If you are on the practitioner side, I do a lot of strategy, but I try and stay involved in platform as well, because that stuff's always changing. It's changing on the AI side. It's changing just in your marketing platforms as well. And I want to know what's going on. It's very hard to recommend a strategy when, 6 months ago it existed in Meta or LinkedIn ads. Now it's
Right.
gone. So, to that end though, like I was saying, with ChatGPT for a practitioner, that's something where if you're writing copy and you're not necessarily a copywriter, it can help you, but I have yet to see an instance where it really mimics the brand voice you're going to. And it's missing that like certain level of nuance that maybe a copywriter on your team would be able to add. What I've seen in working with copywriters who will use ChatGPT is it's kind of their starting point. You know, put in what we're looking to do, get the get those bullets or get that write up that you're looking for, and then inject that brand voice to really make it more going for the persona that your brand's trying to convey after the people you're trying to reach. That's one of the top examples, just as that's kind of where everybody goes in the marketing space, especially. Ask ChatGPT how we can do this or what this should say. It gives you good inspo. I've had instances, actually, a copywriter that I was working with, um, to them put that copy in front of a client, and they were like, this doesn't sound right. Like, was AI used for this? And like, it's used for inspo. It's like, it needs to be tailored a bit more before you can actually put it in front of a client. And then, subsequently in front of a, kind of coming from a brand page or that sort of thing.
Yeah. So you've been at this for what, about 7, 8 years now?
Yeah. I mean, really, I think, overall kind of in the digital marketing space for about 9 years.
Okay.
The past
Right.
few as a, more on the consulting strategy side.
Okay.
But yeah, decent little run at this so far.
Right. So as a marketing maven, right? Can you walk us through how you think marketing has changed, in the past 8, 9 years?
Yeah, no,
Or even
absolutely.
in the last
So,
5 years for that matter? Like,
it's one of
where
those
was
things
it
where
and where do you think it's going?
it changes, year after year
Yeah.
in terms of what the strategy that you need. What I was doing 10 years ago or 9 years ago, I keep rounding up. Probably shouldn't do that, but what I was doing about 9 years ago when I kind of first got into the space, you don't do any of it anymore. You would run, for instance, on Meta, you would run follower campaigns to get your page following higher. You still can. It doesn't necessarily get you the return that you want. Where you might see that
I
on
can
other.
empathize.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like it's cool, but it's also it's really kind of and I'll circle back to it, but what I've seen now is that the creative is just so important, the content is so important. What it was 10 years ago is you could get really kind of niche with your audiences, and I wanna, only go after these very specific people, because I think that that's who my target market is. Now, if you run ads on Meta, for instance, they push you away from that. They'll let you do it. I don't know how much longer. I would say, there's a lot of instances where they've removed more and more interest targeting. You can't quite go after that. I'd say maybe next year, potentially year after, they just go all in on, hey, use our AI tools to do your targeting. And for the most part, it works. I've seen with any ecom brand, anything that's kind of more broad in general, running ads there, if you use Meta's AI, and they're kind of machine learning for your audience targeting, they call it Advantage Plus. Um, you'll see better returns. I've tested it on dozens of ad accounts, dozens of brands. And pretty much every single time, if you let the tech there do its thing and find your audiences for you, you'll get better returns. You can still get more granular. And that's what, 5 years ago, I used to do. If somebody saw your ad, then you put them into another audience bucket where, okay, they're going to get this message for 3 days. Right now, they're going to get this message for the next 7 days. It doesn't really work anymore, and it's just not necessary because you set up all these different layers and you don't get a better return than you do just letting the AI tools do its thing. So I think that's definitely a big point of it. It's just the audience you're going after. That's changed dramatically. And then, like I mentioned, the importance of creative has really just grown over the entire time that I've been doing this, to the point that now having good creative, and a lot of it, is what makes you successful. It used to be I could run an audience and maybe 4 kind of basic static ads and get decent enough returns. Now you have to have some set of video, but you still want to be testing static, and maybe you're doing some animation there as well. And that's really what's going to lead to you being successful, is just having that variety. And that's something where AI also, I think, can lean into. You still have your copywriters, you still have your designers, but for kind of the speed of creating all this stuff, AI can be helpful there for sure.
Right, and I imagine you're not saying, "Hey, we create it with AI and we're good to go," right? Because, we use AI just a little bit in my business. We use it to
Mhm.
help us with our show notes from the show and things like that, but we would never produce it without reading through it and fixing it.
100%. So that's
Never.
something, yeah.
And we have to
I,
do that every single time because there are always mistakes, always.
yep. No,
They don't spell
100%.
something right, they don't use the right word, whatever it is.
Yeah. On the creative development side, I agree. I would never put it in front of a client. I would never run it as an ad
Right.
without giving it that. I don't even want to say once over. I think it takes some dedication to really dive into, is this going to make sense? Is this going to work? Meta, I mentioned a lot. It's the most popular platform, I think, social wise for people to run ads on. And I've, run them across pretty much every paid social platform, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Pinterest, all of it. Meta has probably the most AI in its pocket, followed by TikTok, really catching up, and they have some cool stuff there too. Um, but on the creative side of it, Meta will also push you now to use their AI generated text when you create an ad. I don't like it. They push for it a lot, but again, it misses that brand voice. And there's instances I've used it as inspo, and I've gone, oh, what, this is a decent starting point. Let's inject some brand voice and make it kind of sound like us, and maybe it will work. And it's another option for us to run, but to just like hands off, check that box,
Yeah.
and roll with it doesn't really get
Mhm.
the job done, in my opinion.
It when you are you talking about specifically using it for brand voice? And that's a huge problem because I happen to agree, right? I
Mhm.
was just having this conversation with, my, after hours co-host, I think, maybe 2 days ago, and, we talked about how, I run 2 executive roundtables a month, right, for founders and CEOs, and, when we originally started to build our messaging, sometimes I would hear my team would respond to somebody, and I'd say, I would never use that word. I would never put an exclamation point at that." And that's a human being writing that, I might add. And if a human being part of it is because they didn't know my voice yet, right? So, if that's happening with a human being writing it, how can we even possibly think AI can manage that?
Right. No, I
Garbage
think
in,
that's
garbage out, right? If you
right.
don't
No,
give
it
it.
is. It's a excellent point that I think, and me even looking at again, I think the most kind of basic form in my mind is ChatGPT. How are we, taking something like that, putting this in, and it really is. It's it's a learning tool. So if you're depending on what you put in, that is the exput or output. Sorry, output that you get. And in a sense, again, I keep coming back to like that. It's good for inspiration. I don't think that it's the final. I've yet to use it where this is the final version that I can use right away. Um, what I do like to do in kind of the AI sense is give it examples. And I think that, yeah, if you had somebody on your team, you have a copywriter doing some of this work, kind of that historical knowledge of, hey, we've run all of this before. This is, here's our brand book, here's our guidance of what we would do. That's kind of how that informs that. It can be kind of the same with AI, where the more information that you give it, the better your output is. However, there still is that, kind of risk that you run. And it's a not uncommon issue where even putting all that in, it's also scouring all of this other, you know, data that has created this machine learning engine to give you that output that you're not necessarily going to get that perfect solution. So I do think it'll continue learning, getting smarter. Um, I don't think we're quite there yet for let's take this and use it immediately.
So, in terms of marketing with AI being, influential in search results now, how can a company in 2025 strive to become part of the AI generated response relevant to their offering, right? And I have to wonder, are SEO practices now completely passé?
I'm glad you brought this up because it was something that I was like looking at honestly earlier today, and just kind of thinking through on the SEO side of
Yeah.
things. Because you're right, every time you go on a Google search now, it's here's our AI recommendation. Like I'm
Oy.
looking for a website. I mean, I've even seen it. I'm googling a local restaurant to make a reservation for dinner. Oh, let me tell you more about restaurants with AI. That's not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a tricky thing. I have like CNBC on a lot, and
Mhm.
every day they're talking about some business that's
Right.
AI revolution and how they're trying to get their market share of
Yeah.
AI. And obviously I think there's an important place for it. I know there's areas for me where it has made,
Mhm.
certain tasks easier by being able to automate it with AI. But for the general consumer, I don't know that you want it in every aspect of your life. I don't think you
Right.
do.
Yeah.
Um, and, on the SEO side of things, that's kind of a twofold thing. If you have a website that you haven't really optimized for SEO, there
Mhm.
are probably hundreds now. I know if you Google SEO AI tools, there's lists of, the top 20 or what have you, and I'm sure there's many more than that. So if you have a website that's not optimized for AI, I do think some of those tools can make it pretty easy. I also think, you know, good and bad, but the nice thing with AI is a lot of these things that you typically need to hire a practitioner to do, or in some cases even an agency that's going to cost you, significantly. You can, maybe for a couple bucks a month, get some sort of SEO AI tool that's going to optimize your website, much lower cost, lower barrier to entry. I think for some of these smaller brands, especially, that's a really nice place to start. But then still, if Google's giving you the summary up top, are people even reaching your website? And that I haven't quite found the solution to. I think it's a potentially big problem where you're putting all this great content out there on your website, and then Google's taking it, summarizing it. That traffic's never hitting your website.
Right.
Um,
They're taking all the credit
I,
for your work.
I think, and
Yeah.
then, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe if you hover over you, they cite the source a little bit, but I think that there's probably going to be a lot of backlash about that. I think it's
Yeah.
so new that we kind of haven't even gotten to that point yet. But I don't think that it is necessarily sustainable that way. I also think,
Mhm.
you know, ideally Google will find, hey, nobody's reading this or people are clicking past this because they're obviously tracking every mouse movement you have on that page. Um, that hopefully it kind of gets a little more not as in your face. I don't know if that will be for sure, but I think right now the push with and Google's, one of the biggest AI players for sure, but all these companies, it's how can we show our shareholders that we are using AI? Because it's a buzzword right now. And will it be, in some time? I think it'll probably, obviously it's going to evolve how it actually affects our lives. Um, that maybe they won't need to prove that it's as in your face, but it's such a big topic right now that every chance every one of these companies gets, you're like, hey, use our AI tool.
Mhm. Mm.
LinkedIn, another example. I think I
Yeah.
went to either write a post or write an ad. It's like, try it with AI. I'm like, I already have the copy I want to say. I like my version better.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need the AI tool for it. I
Yeah.
appreciate that it exists, but I don't need it.
It makes me think, Paul, about uh y- and maybe this would be an interesting experiment, right? You know what you want to say.
Hmm.
Um and also have their AI generated and then put them side by side,
I
right? And say, "Hey, which one do you think AI wrote and which one do you think we wrote?"
it'd be cool to do it just as like a general social experiment on your link.
Of course I would.
Uh,
That's my whole
that,
point, right? I mean, I would totally do that. It's, as I'm
yeah,
thinking about this, I'm thinking, "Okay, I'm gonna talk to my chief of staff and see if we can't do something like that on whatever the next post is. Let's have LinkedIn's AI create it, and let's put them side by
mhm.
side and see which one's better."
Yeah, I'm
Maybe we
excited.
put to Paul, "Which do you think these was written by AI and which was written by a human?"
There we go. I mean, I can tell you too. I can't wait to see it that way. I also know, I mentioned Meta is pushing towards their AI language on a lot of your ads now. But I have, copywriters that I work with. I have that are very, this is the brand, this is the exact message we want to convey. Um, and I set some ads up earlier this week where I'm doing almost that exact thing. Here's our 5 versions that we wrote that we know mimic exactly what we wanna say. Here are, a handful of Meta AI versions, and they're gonna run in ads, and I'm gonna be able to see exactly the breakdown of this copy gave me this many conversions at this
Yeah,
return on ad spend.
right.
And I'll be able to see, did AI do a better job or did the stuff we wrote do a better job? And that, I mean, really quantifiable of, on the brand side, hey, when we write the copy, we're getting a 3x return on ad spend. When AI does it, it's only 1.5. Or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe we're way off there, but I'll be able to really see that. And I think that'll be cool to see.
And I think that's really, something that anybody that's whether you're a full-time, CMO for a company, right? A company that's large enough to have a chief marketing officer, or a smaller company who has a head of marketing, or, somebody like you who does, fractional marketing, right? And, to be able to go in whether, regardless of who that person is, that person should be able to say, "Well, let's look and see which is producing better results." right? So thinking about just marketing, and let's kind of forget about AI here for a minute. If you look at, photo versus video versus written marketing materials, across the board, which do you think is most effective? And moving into next year, 2025, what style content do you think users are most attracted to? And does it depend by generations?
It depends on so many things, and I
Yeah.
do think, there's so many different aspects of it of, why is this resonating where? What vertical are you in? What is the brand? All of that. And it does, it's generation dependent too. I mean, and it almost sounds kind of like obvious or cliche, but, you know, the younger generation, that attention span isn't there for them to watch a minute and a half ad. They just won't do it. They'll skip past it. Whereas, older generations, especially if it's somebody who's already shown some intent, they will spend the time to watch that longer form video. And there's a lot of value in that. If you have a attention grabbing long form video that people are interested in what you're promoting, they will watch it. If you're trying to promote a long form video to somebody that's never heard of you, um, that is especially younger generation with not the attention span, they're going to skip right past it. That being said, I think that video is where I've seen kind of the most balanced success. It's not the easiest thing to produce, and it really is, even, and that is true on Meta, it's true on TikTok ads. If it's a video where it's more talking to camera, and there is a cool AI thing that TikTok has now to kind of bridge that gap, because those are not easy to get. You need to work with an influencer. You need to have somebody on your team that's willing to come on and, talk to camera versus a static. You can churn out, 100 statics in a day if you really want it to. And there's value in that too. It's obviously a lower barrier to entry. It is generally more, cost effective to get a bunch of statics. If you're working with a designer, they're going to be able to spend less time producing statics than they would video.
And when you
And then
when you say statics, you just mean a photo?
yeah, photo.
Okay.
But it could be more of a lifestyle photography image, or it could be something that's more design heavy, more,
But
I don't
just
want to say
basically a static image, and that's
exactly.
what okay,
Yes.
got it.
And then, yeah, the written marketing side of thing that, on a lot of social channels, it doesn't grab the attention quite enough. But there's so much to do with email marketing where I've seen you can have a really heavily designed email. You can also have just more plain text email that, especially when it's like a letter from a founder, I've seen those work insanely well. Almost every kind of typically, especially for newer brands, but if you're setting up email flows that are going out to people who have recently purchased, somewhere in there, I think there should be a plain text letter from the founder. I've seen those work so well at capturing people for whatever your conversion event is. So again, it kind of depends on the placement, it depends on the audience, but each of those kind of has their own place where they can be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I got an email today from some founder about something that was founded at the Harvard Innovation Lab, and reached out to me, something about crowdfunding, which I would never, I don't know, and on their thing, and it's seeing some great traction, and here, check it out over here, and gosh, I'd appreciate your feedback on the opportunity. Let me know your thoughts, questions. They talk about what they've generated, and it's some new talent platform, um, that's targeting the, $900 billion global talent market. Now, every time I see somebody pitching something like that, somebody who has, you know, 3 decades of professional search experience, right, as a professional headhunter, um, I see that and I'm like, "Okay, let's look at your background. Let's look at your let's look at, do you even know anything about search? How do you think you're gonna fix the global talent market? And you think Deloitte knows anything about the talent market, who they're getting involved with?" And this is where I get back to when you're thinking about marketing, which is basically what this guy did. I mean, he wasn't pitching me to say, "Hey, can you join our crowdfunding?" He wants my opinion. "Well, you want my opinion? Let's schedule a conversation and I'll talk to you." Right? Because first of all, I don't wanna read through your 5-page document. I really don't. I wanna have a conversation with you. You can walk me through what you're doing because I wanna ask you questions. Kinda takes me back to how do you find the right marketing person? Like, what are the questions we need to be asking? right? I know when somebody says to me, "Hey, Carol, here's a great new product. We're gonna sell to companies," and because companies already don't know how to recruit, this is only going to exacerbate it, right? Because they don't do it right. They have people that aren't qualified, that aren't trained. They're low paid, right? Well, how do you think that this is going to fix your problem then if you already don't know what you're doing?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of the finding the right marketing person, I agree. It's, okay, cool, you have a new platform, but I think there needs to be that kind of human element. And I know that, it's kind of everybody that I work with, and I think it's especially true being in a fractional setting where I am working with so many clients, and it's not, you know, getting a job where now you're, probably going to be with this company for at least a few years, ideally more. Um, but it's more so you want to put that best foot forward every time, but you also need to have the credentials to back it up and talk about what you've done, and have the people that you've worked with before that can be that, sort of voice to say, no, this really was a great experience. Here's why. I wonder with these platforms, do you really get that? Are you missing? I feel like you're probably missing part or even more of what you're really looking for there. Where is this credentialing? What have you done? I think it's so important. And I found introductions are, easy more or less. It's not hard to meet people. It's when you start talking about your subject matter, can you really nail down, if you were to say, Paul, I want to launch this brand today. How would you do it? I can walk you through, okay, I'm going to run ads here, run ads here. Here's what we're going to create. Kind of right off the top there. I think that when you go platform wise, and it's something I've seen too, with, for instance, I generally, a lot of word of mouth for how I end up, working with new partners, but you have platforms out there that are more, and I think, I'm kind of at a point where it is more kind of fractional strategy, not so much just freelance implementation. But you have some of these freelance platforms that there's, million and one people on there that don't necessarily have the background. And yeah, they might, be kind of a global person. You can work with them for, very, very inexpensive rates. But have they done this before? Is there that kind of background that you don't know? And it's a risk you may take for an inexpensive price. But I think that when you really get down to it, being able to have that human approach of what are we missing here? What do we need to know is super valuable. And that the platforms, like you mentioned, might be missing that.
Yeah, well, and I think often platforms are pitching themselves as a panacea. They don't say that,
Mhm.
but I think that's what they're trying to get people to think. "Oh, we're gonna solve all your problems." No, you're not. You're a tool. So how does and that's what if this company does decide to take me up on a phone call, I can say to them, "So, what do you think this is gonna do for search? Walk me through somebody's search process." And if they can't even walk me through a search process, then in what world is anybody gonna be fool enough? But they'll find people who are fool enough that are looking for an answer to their problem because they're actually not solving their problem in the way it should be solved. And that's what I think is where it's analogous to AI, right? People are looking at it going, "Hey, we're gonna solve all your problems with this." And I call bullshit on that. I really do. You're not gonna solve all my problems. You're not
No,
gonna even
I will.
solve most of my problems or even half my problems or probably even a quarter of my problems.
Yeah, I think you have, more or less. I mean, I think it goes back to that. Everybody right now wants to show that they have an AI offering. And a lot of times it's not good. And I think if, you look at these tools and everybody's a disruptor, right? That's always a funny word to me when we're disrupting the $1 trillion whatever industry. It's like, are you though? It's a, and it, the, that's even true of, I think, very, innovative products. The disruptor phrase just always makes me laugh. But I agree. I think that there's a time and place for AI. I think, when we kind of talk about these different things that I've been able to use it to implement, there's some of this where it's super cool. For instance, I'm, right now in the process of working with some TikTok creators to get new ads, to put kind of a creative brief in front of them, have them create videos that I can use in ads. But I wanted to get something running sooner. TikTok now has TikTok Creative Symphony, where you give it a brief, it gives you some ads, that come out of that. They're not the best by any means, but I can start running with those until I get kind of better, more human created videos, and go from there. And then the thing that I've found, where huge benefit to me is reporting. Reporting takes up a ton of time. It's super important. You want your clients to know how their, media investment is
Mhm.
performing,
Mhm.
but it's a big time constraint when I have to manually pull a bunch of data and do insights. And there's a lot of tools out there now where it'll automatically pull the data in from the different platforms, and then it will give you AI insights as to here's what's working. Again, it's still something I would do, but it does save me some time that I can then go focus on the stuff that is actually going to make more of a difference in their marketing, as opposed to me just spending hours and hours on reporting every week.
So, yeah, I wanna I had this on my list to ask you about. You mentioned this TikTok Symphony. First of all, I'm not on TikTok. I have no interest in being on TikTok. And TikTok Symphony, like, what the hell is that?
It's interesting. So I just started playing around with it. Um, and I went to a TikTok event back in August, kind of prepping for holiday, and they unveiled a handful of new things of how can you get more ads. Because the thing with TikTok ads, that's the platform that I've seen be most comparable to Meta.
Mhm.
Meta's been kind of the big player for the longest time. It's where a lot of advertisers start out with their media dollars because you're going to generally get some sort of return there. And it works across B2C and B2B. But TikTok's the closest thing to giving them a run for their money in terms of I'm seeing very similar results. If I advertise on LinkedIn, a lot of times I see higher cost per result than I do on Meta, often a more targeted audience. So there's some
Yeah.
value in that,
Well,
especially
because
for
because
B2B.
LinkedIn thinks it's a panacea for everybody, and it is not. People need to stop buying into that.
But on the TikTok side of things, the biggest issue you run into is Meta. You can run static images like we were talking about before.
Mhm.
You can create those easy, 120 of them. A few of them are going to take off and really work well.
Yep.
On TikTok, you have to have video. Video is obviously more time consuming to produce. So TikTok Symphony is AI created video ads that they create for free, and then you use them in their ads. So the hope is it gives advertisers more creative content that they can use in their ads,
Okay.
um, without them necessarily needing to partner with influencers, because that is a cost to a lot of brands. If you can use AI, saves that cost. The smaller brands are able to take off with this. It's not that bad, but it's not that great either. I think it sits right now, like I mentioned, it's kind of a stopgap. I want to get better videos for a particular project I'm working on right now. Until I do, I gave this a brief. I uploaded some B-roll footage, and then TikTok took all of this and they have avatars that they've created. So they actually got the likeness of people, to be these avatars. It'll lip sync to the script that the AI will write for you. You can edit that. And they're not the worst. I obviously know they're AI generated. You have to label them as AI generated just per TikTok policy. Um, but in terms of getting a message across and just having more variety, it's something I'm testing right now. I am very curious because I'm going to use those versus TikTok Creator Challenge, which is just where you put a brief out there and real people create videos for your product. And then working with some influencers, content creators. I'm going to test all three of these together and see, what is the result I'm getting. Um, and I don't have the highest hopes for the AI videos, but I was able to get those the quickest. So I'm starting off with them. But it is, something that I think will evolve. And potentially get a little bit better. I mean, I was able to customize the script to make sure that I was the exact language that I wanted. And then you have this kind of fake avatar putting the video forward. It's scary in a sense, but it's kind of cool too that we're able to have that developed so quickly.
Yeah, interesting. So, do you see a world, where AI can become involved, to the point of making decisions when it comes to marketing, or will it remain a tool?
I think the point that you made of this is the tool is absolutely the case.
Yeah.
Will we get to a point where it's making the decisions? On one hand, with targeting, like I mentioned on Meta, where we're, letting AI kind of find our exact audience, that's already there. We're not seeing those decisions, but we're making the decision to let it run with whatever audience it thinks is going to get us the best result. So that's already there. Flip side of it, I think it is probably, I don't know that I personally, as a marketer, would trust letting AI make those decisions because you're talking about your ad dollars and your budget at that point. And if I have a client spending, $1.5 million a month and I'm going to just let AI run with that, I don't think so. That's a tremendous amount of money to be just kind of all over the place with where you're, or not even all over the place, just letting the tool decide. I don't like letting campaigns that are spending that much go a day without even looking at them. Like I like to be very on top of how our performance is, because if you, let me give this example. So say I had that campaign and let me, for simplicity's sake, say I have a campaign spending $10,000 a day on Meta ads. And typically I would go in and I might say, oh, past couple of days, our results have been really poor. I'm going to ramp the budget down. I'm going to replace the creative. I'm going to try and boost these results back up. Say I was just hands off for the whole month and I let AI run with that. AI might ramp that budget when my results aren't doing well. And now I'm getting, worse cost per result, spending more money, all because I was just like, oh, let's let AI run with it. So I think that there's insights that AI provides to say, hey, this is why your creative is working well, or, this is a campaign that we think you should maybe turn off and, run this instead. I think those insights very valuable. And as a tool, I like it for that. But I don't want to give it all the reins. I can't imagine a point where I would want to let it have all the reins because I think especially for me, when you start talking about the actual ad dollars, that's when it gets real for you, for my clients, especially, it's, oh, this all sounds well and good. Well, once I start spending their money, then they really care about, is that investment coming back? And if I'm just letting AI do it, I don't think that I think there's a lot of risk there that it's going to be hard for a lot of people to stomach if we got to that point.
Hmm. Um, Final thing I want to talk about here is influencer marketing, which, every time I hear the word influencer, I want to vomit. But personally, and maybe it's because I didn't grow up with technology, and I really have no interest in sitting in front of my phone all day long, right? I mean, frankly, I'd rather be out, snowshoeing if there's snow, or riding a horse or something like that, right? Rather than sitting around the house, looking at my phone, or even wherever looking at my phone. So I'm wondering if you think influencer marketing, which I don't really know much about, is going to shift, and if you see AI being involved in that.
I would say shift, in a sense, I feel it already has, not necessarily even AI related. I just know what I've seen from influencer marketing. There was a time, and I mean, I'd say 5 years ago, I'd say even more. I think there's still plenty of people that try influencer marketing now. I don't see it being as lucrative. Any project that I've worked on or people that I've, discussed this topic with, you'll spend a lot of money to work with an influencer because they, feel that they have a brand. And that's not to say that, I think there's some very talented content creators that do have, interesting lifestyle that they're sharing on social, but their following is not necessarily all your target customer. Um, so, say, and influencers can charge, there's some really small influencers that can maybe charge a couple $100, but there's, celebrities charging a few $100,000 to have a post on their Instagram. And if you, look at that, I would almost guarantee you gave me that same $250,000 that you're going to spend on, a couple Instagram posts to just let me run ads with it. I will get you a better return on the ads. What I think has kind of happened, and this is why I've started using the term content creator more than influencer, um, because, and it's not that they're necessarily synonymous, but they're similar. And what I found is if I have a product, I'll go to an influencer that, maybe fits kind of the niche or the, target demo that I'm thinking is going to buy this product. I'll say, hey, can you, I'll pay you to make videos of this product or of whatever it is. They'll make those videos. Then I take that content and run it as an ad. And then AI on Meta is doing the targeting to show that ad to people that are most likely to resonate with it. So in terms of actual like traditional influencer marketing, where you're just paying for a post on their Instagram or, sponsoring a YouTube video, I don't see that being as lucrative. I've seen that shift kind of over the past 4 or 5 years, maybe, but definitely recently. But the content creator and then taking that just as a creative that you're leveraging, that's still really valuable. And I think that's kind of
Yeah.
the shift we're seeing there.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, because I don't think I've really gotten a clear answer to this question. What are the 3 questions somebody who's thinking about bringing in somebody to do their marketing for them in 2025 should be asking those potential, whether you're bringing in somebody full time or bringing somebody in fractionally?
Yeah,
What are
for
just
sure.
3 questions you better be asking them?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And because I think, when I look at, what I'm always talking about, it's the following. It's what have I done before? So I think that that's kind of the case, especially kind of depending on where you are career wise. Obviously, a more junior employee is not going to have that pedigree, but if you are bringing in that more senior level person, what have they done? And it depends on different fields too. I'm pretty specialized in the digital marketing side of things. If you're looking for a more broad spectrum marketer, it's less about, what does your performance look like on an individual campaign basis and more what have you done, um, overall in terms of marketing initiatives or leading a team or what have you. So I think that's a big one, is what kind of does that history for you look like? I think skill set, in all of these cases, whether we're talking about AI or not, there's so many different tools that go into your marketing tech stack. And a lot of, depending on the business or the brand you're partnering with, what is your familiarity with those? I think that's so important. For instance, for me, it is having that knowledge of all these different paid social, paid digital channels, and how do we implement that? Because there's a big difference, and even, if I'm working with any practitioners or partners of, how quickly can we get this to market? If it's a tool that I ran before, I'm about to start running some ads for a new client on Reddit. They'd never done it before. I've done Reddit plenty. We can spin that up in a couple days. No
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
So, somebody that has never touched a particular tool before and you're like, hey, this is part of our strategies. We want to be on this platform, but then you haven't done that before. It's just going to slow you down. It's a lot of these, they're, similar and you can learn that. But I think having those different tools, that's definitely another big one as well. And then, I mean, for me, whether I've been, interviewing people, new teammates, or, questions been asked of me plenty, is really just, I think, how you work well with, or how you would work well with the existing team. And that's, business dependent too. But I think it's so important because you can have all the skills in the world, but if you're trying to integrate into a team where you're just not going to be a good fit, um, it's not going to work well for anybody. It's going to discourage the existing team. You're not going to be able to work at your best. And there's issues with that, or instances with that, where I don't think it's necessarily, the person's not maybe qualified. It's more so their work style is very different than our work style. One partner that I just started working with recently, we were chatting and I'm like, we think about things the exact same way. This is perfect. Like, we are so efficient in terms of how we're getting stuff done just because of that. But there's other instances where, people want to see, oh, well, this is how I do it. Why aren't we doing it this way? That's not going to be a good fit. That's just kind of
Yeah.
generally the case.
Well, and I've said it many, many, many times, and whenever it's appropriate to say it, I'll say it again, which is right now. People leave companies in the first 18 months. Over 50% of people leave within the first 18 months for reasons having nothing to do with their skills and abilities. And that's exactly what you said, right? You have, whether you're bringing somebody in full time or as a contractor, or as fractional, because the fractional person is really just an extension of your team, right? So, you have to look at, is this person going to be, is this a good cultural fit for me? Right? I've got a new prospect that I think is going to become a client. And that's one of the things he and I have to talk about. I'm
Hmm.
going to actually be part of your team for the next 90 days. Right? So let's make sure we talk about your current culture and make sure that I am a fit and that they're a fit for me. Right?
Yeah,
So
no, I
good.
1000% can echo
Yeah.
that. I think me being fractional now is awesome because I get to work with all these different brands and I'm working with, but in every case, it's, is this a good culture fit? And, having before this worked at, a handful of different agencies, there's agencies that I've absolutely loved that have a great culture and that I've been a good fit with. And that, I felt have been a good fit for me. And there's agencies where, hey, maybe something just doesn't quite jive here. And it's not necessarily the fault of me or of the agency. It's just different styles. And especially, you find that, I think, depending on the different sizes of the teams too, can really play a big impact in that as well.
Good. Well, hey, Paul, this was a good conversation. I thank you for your time, and
Absolutely,
I
Carl. Yeah.
hope our audience gets a lot out of it.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this. It was great chatting with you. And yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Evolving Your Workplace. Is there a topic you want to discuss? Let us know what you think in a review, and don't forget to click follow to stay up to date on upcoming episodes. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.